But we have good policemen as well, and it's important to raise those points. So it's important to also ensure that we do right by them, at least provide the barest minimum they need to thrive. I mean, that point was jettisoned. As I mentioned, I think it was just last year again that the Minister of Police Affairs talked about pulling down some of these barracks. And the question is, what is standing in the way of the PSC, the Police Trust Fund, the Ministry of Police Affairs? What is standing in your way, I mean, to ensure that these people at least look at that accommodation? I mean, even prisons, pardon me, sometimes look better than that.
You know, I'm at a loss, Kayode. The question that you asked now begs so many answers. This whole NSAS campaign started when? 2014 or thereabout? It was exactly 10 years ago, at the beginning of the year 2013, about that Channels Television conducted a documentary about the training facilities of the police. At that time, we had problems in our heads, even observing police accommodation, police cells, no different. Police stations where they have to work, no different. So if we pay them peanuts, please, what are we expecting? Now, I don't really think there is much to say here, other than for someone somewhere to just get up and do their jobs. It is the responsibility of government to take care of the welfare and security of its citizens. Policemen are citizens too, aren't they? Markwe, Chamberlain, I beg your pardon, Nelta.
That's what happens when you guys are throwing jabs at each other before the program. Well, indeed, I mean, they certainly are Nigerians, they're human beings, and they need to be served as well. I mean, there is no way we can give them that and expect any service level, I mean, any delivery of service from people who live in accommodation like that. We've been on this matter, I mean, as you rightly pointed out, for many years. That police, trying to remember the name of
police training school.
Yeah, the training school report was done in 2012. I recollect perfectly because, I mean, I was also doing some police community report stories in the United States at the time. And those reports showed what the ideal ought to be and what it was that we had. So, I mean, a lot to learn, a lot to draw lessons from. We're hoping that another one will not go down before an emergency fund is set up to do the right thing. We kept on highlighting, this happened in Ibadan. If you drive past on your way to the local airport in Lagos or even the international airport around Ikeja, all you have to do is pass the backyard. The moment you start seeing decking, where you can see the iron rods used to make the decking of any building, you know that building is not fit for people to live in. Yet, that's where our police people have been living for many years, in spite of attention being drawn to the welfare of our police officers. This is what we have. Thankfully, no life was lost in this particular incident. But must we wait until people die?
You know, Mark, questions run through my mind when I see this kind of a thing, and certain quotes, you know, when they say quotable quotes, motivational speakers always have quotable quotes, but this is not about motivation. It's about, how do you say that? Reflection. Do a rethink for yourself as one who's leading or serving the people. What are your thoughts as regards the people you're serving? If we say those who are hurt will hurt others. So if people are not catered for, they will not care for people. They will not cater to others. So the questions I would like to ask is, how well are those who care for us cared for? If we say, okay, these people are supposed to take care of us with medical, whichever way, the doctors, the teachers, the essential workers, the doctors, the teachers, the journalists are also. How well are those who care for us cared for? That's one. Number two, how secure are those who secure us? How secure are they? Are they secure in any way? What about their welfare, their families, and all of that? These are questions that those in, all of us, not just those in the leadership positions, in offices, should think about. How well do we care for those who care for us? And that is something that we should all think about a great deal. If buildings like that are there for people to live in, without pointing, and Mark, it's not just the police barracks. Barracks generally. I mean, there have been conversations about should they move out of the barracks and live amongst the people. That way they'll secure the people more. These are all questions that leadership needs to look at and think about. How can we change the situation as it is moving forward? But these are thoughts we should have as we take a moment and return to Sunrise 84 to look at the papers. Starting off with the Guardian newspaper, rising poverty costs dampen eSIM adoption, impacts on Nigeria's card production. That you'll find on page 6. The Guardian decided to focus more on technology and communication, how it's helping out Nigeria. So just as a story you see there, how poverty costs dampen eSIM adoption, impact on Nigeria's card production. But see this one, off that conversation we had earlier about collapsed buildings, how unregulated estate agencies, firms engage in multi-million naira scam. Check it's a property on page 21. You find out again, you find so many estates. Who regulates them? Who gives approvals for all of these buildings? And then another building collapses 24 hours after someone lose visit to Banana Island site is on page 8 at Lagos. And that's it from The Guardian.
Well, the Vanguard has this. Global competitiveness, over 30 taxes choke industries in Nigeria. That's the lead story. 17 bills on more levies pending in NAS. Taxes above global average of 23.37%. SMEs lose 9% of yearly income. Stakeholders chart way forward. Well, that's certainly very important. Sudan war, Nigerians' only way out is evacuation by road. That's according to the federal government. Asked Nigerian students in Sudan to stay indoors. Says it's dangerous to move to borders. So for more on this, we certainly will be speaking with people in Sudan. Do stay here. Stay with us on the program. Let's leave it there for the Vanguard newspapers.
And take a look at this Nigeria this morning. Sudan is the lead story. FG sets up evacuation committee as US, UK, others rescue citizens. And you see pictures, or a picture rather, of a convoy leaving Khartoum as it advances on the road towards Port Sudan. I recall the minister talking about Port Sudan a lot yesterday. But yes, we'll be getting into that one for you this morning to give you updates and let you know what's happening. And you see, of course, that story. Another 3-story building collapses in Lagos, hit by thunderstorm. Developers defied stop work order, says state government. So it's page 13 right there on the front page. And just one more for you. I'm actually spoiled for choice, but I'll take this one. Nurses, midwives decry exclusion from 40% workers' pay rise. Oh, wow. So that's page 16.
Oh dear. Daily Trust newspaper, I'll take just one major story from the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. FG begins evacuation of stranded Nigerians tomorrow. 5,500 waiting for government action. Students move to Ethiopia, cry for rescue. Airlines bypass airspace. Countless questions in my head. Don't we have standby protocols for such things? But then, in crisis situation, exactly what can you really do, especially when you have to consider other authorities? And that and several other stories on the front page of the paper, but let's leave it there for the Daily Trust newspaper.
And then we have New Telegraph here. FG said, ignore NANS, stay indoors. FG tells Nigerian students in crisis-ridden Sudan, ignore NANS, stay indoors. NLC urges FG to guarantee safety of citizens, diplomats, foreign nationals evacuated. LP presidential candidate threats over failure to evacuate trapped Nigerians. That diplomats, foreign nationals evacuated, are they Nigerian diplomats or foreign nationals? Well, check page 2, 5, and 8 for details. Above that, May 29 handover date remains sacrosanct, says Buhari. $0.3 million foreign assets. Probe Keyamo's finances. Article tells EFCC is on page 2. And corruption, how NAS failed to pass bill creating special courts at Saga. That's at the bottom there. But this one, health, says study ties excessive screen time to eye disorders. That's a study that they did. New Telegraph will tell you more about that. And that's it on our look at what the papers, some of the papers are saying today. We'll be back in a moment to continue the conversation, especially around what's going on in Sudan and Nigerian students there. Don't go away.
Well, starting off with that big story playing out in Sudan, hundreds killed in that conflict, and caught right in the middle are citizens of different countries, Nigerians. The minister saying about 5,500 Nigerians actually live in Sudan, 80% of them students. So you'd understand why a lot of Nigerians are worried, family members, and of course the Nigerians in Sudan themselves. So let's check in with the situation this morning and get updates. We're joined by someone at least who has an insight into what's playing out there. Akintaye Babatunde is Vice President External Affairs, NANS, that's the National Association of Nigerian Students, joins us virtually this morning. Thank you for joining us on the program. And, you know, reading stories this morning alone, you'd see reference to NANS saying, ignore NANS, wait for the appropriate order from the government. And I mean, it's trending that the NANS in Sudan asked, students to pay a certain fee so they can get access to some sort of transportation to get them out of Sudan to safety. So in the light of this new, statement from the government, what can you tell us then? What exactly played out? Was that instruction from NANS Sudan, was it genuine? Is it genuine? And just what prompted that, if you can give us a background to it?
Good morning. Thank you very much. That statement was actually from the last president, Sudan, and his executives. And after we got that, even before the federal government gave their update yesterday, we have been discussing with the president and the executive and some students. So when we got that from him, we asked him what has prompted this. And he said the level of conversation or the level of attention the Nigeria consulate is giving to the issue in Sudan is not too okay with them. So he said there was an announcement for ceasefire, that they are going to cease fire in Sudan for the next 72, or that was about 2 days ago, for the 72 hours like that. There's some countries that are trying to evacuate their people. So they were not getting information about how they will evacuate Nigerians. So that prompted them to meet themselves and say, what is the best way? So if there's going to be a ceasefire, let them move themselves to the nearest border where they can be evacuated. But we advise him that that is also very dangerous. But later end, the ceasefire was not really obeyed by the people fighting in Sudan. So we stampeded the activities before the statement from the federal government that they should not obey that directives. So we are also on the part of the federal government that the students should stay indoors for now due to safety. That was what prompted that statement from the president.
So that statement came a few days ago and particularly asked them to converge for evacuation. And I imagine for a lot of them, they may have, taken to that instruction and tried to converge. So are those students, or do we have students that are converged right now? What exactly are you hearing from the NANS in Sudan? I imagine you have an open line of communication.
Yes, we have always been communicating with them since the incident happened. And many of the students are converged together in their various universities. We have some in the University of Sudan, some are in University of Khartoum, we have some in International University of Africa, we have some at Al-Nailin University in Khartoum. The majority of them are at the state capital where the battle is really happening, taking place. So they are together, most of them are together in their various hall in their universities. So even with the information, before the information, there are some students that have found their way to the Ethiopian border as we speak. Some students are at the Ethiopian border as we speak, which the Ethiopian did not allow them to come in due to the issue of visa or no visa. So the situation is serious. Even when you speak with them, they talk to you with tears. We're still talking yesterday. Yesterday, the communication break because the network in Sudan seems to be down since yesterday afternoon. We were unable to get hold of them to continue conversation with them. But at the last time we discussed, we told them to just please wait for further directive from the consulate in Sudan or the embassy or our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because we have also been discussing with them, and what they are saying is that students should remain indoor. They are doing everything possible to evacuate them. But as we speak, we have some students at the Ethiopian border. We have many of them in their hostel. The worst hit of this issue is even the females, because many of our female students they are just there. No, feeding is difficult for them to even get their basic needs is difficult. They are just all together jam-packed in a specific hall in their institution. So that is the situation of it.
Well, I'd like you to expatiate a little further on that living condition, because it's something that comes to my mind, and I'm wondering how many parents are taking that. But first, to respond to this, for how long do you think this build-up has been on? Within which time, the students would probably have expected that maybe there had been some movement or some activity that will lead to the evacuation. For how long has this been building up, from what you guys know, and what exactly are the living conditions of students, as you are, aware the information that you have available to you?
The tension has been building up for the president said the tension has been up for almost a month, even before the escalation of the battle. And before the battle, he said he spoke with the student affairs officer of the consulate that it is happening, but they are optimistic it will not get to this level. If we are talking about the student living condition in Sudan, it is worse as we speak, because they can't even go outside to get anything. They can't buy food, they can't buy provisions, they can't get anything. Some of them hardly feed on a food daily. So they can't do anything, they can't go out, the network is bad, the electricity is not even stable, so they are just hoping and praying, optimistic, staying indoor, because they can't go out. They are at the state capital where the battle is going on. So the tension has been building up, which we expect the embassy or the consulate to have taken some action, if it is to give directive that there are some states in Sudan that this battle is not really affecting like that. Maybe we'll have moved our students out of the capital to those states, or we'll have moved them out we'll have evacuated them from there. But with what you are seeing now, the living situation, the living condition of the students is nothing to take home about. It is worst. If that we can add some of them, we'll try adding some of them even to this conversation, but the network is down so that they can tell you directly what they are facing. Well, they can't. Some of them actually go. They hardly part. They hardly eat. Even there is no freedom. Upon that, the extension, they had the sound of bomb blast every day. Gone. Some of them said, anytime they are shooting, sometimes the bullet pricks into their rooms, the halls they are. So that is the situation the students are presently.
Now, from what you have said now, it would seem like the information is, has been at the disposal of the Nigerian authorities, with you guys in Sudan, or Khartoum, perhaps, to be a little more specific. What kind of communication came to you from the Nigerian government authorities right there, or representatives right there with you, within the past one or thereabout months, that, as you said, this has been building up?
Yes, as I said, the tension has been building up, and the president in Sudan said they have been communicating. They have a line of communication between the students and the student affairs officer of the consulate. So when we got to know fully about this situation when the war started. So that was when the president communicated to us through the NAS president, and we swing to action. We have communicated with the ministry, with NEMA. And also, we have communicated with the embassy too. And they told us they are doing everything to see how they can evacuate. Yes, there are some points they've raised that evacuation is almost impossible as we speak. Because as we want our students to be evacuated, we also want their safety. The airport is grounded. To move the students from the capital to the nearest border is almost impossible, because we have large number of students in Sudan. About over 4,000 students, as quoted by the president. So we have communicated with them. We've written series of letters, and we even told NEMA and the ministry that the process of the evacuation, anything they are doing, we also want to be involved as student leaders, so that we can pressure them more to take the necessary actions. But as we speak, we are more concerned about those that even at the border, the Ethiopian border. They have been there for the past 3 days, and they cannot cross the border due to visa issues.
So can you tell us then, I mean, you told us that you spoke to some of those students last night, I imagine, or late yesterday before connections cut off. So tell us, what are you hearing from government? You've mentioned some of these, government agencies. You've mentioned the ministry. You mentioned NEMA. What are you hearing regarding the evacuation in terms of timeline? There's some, letters flying online about the request for certain buses to convey 3,500 Nigerians. But in terms of timeline, because yes, we can keep telling them to stay indoors, but for some of them, it's going to be very difficult. You've mentioned their upkeep. They need to get food. They need to get all of these things. So in terms of timeline, what definitive information do you have from the authorities?
As far as I'm speaking here, there is no definite information. All the authority keeps saying is that the students should remain indoors, and they are working on this. They are doing this. Even their communication, they are not really communicating with us, and that is the reality. So we are just, and it has always, we are just hoping that as they are telling us that they are working, they are going to evacuate, there is no timeline, there is no guideline, there is no really direct communication on what is happening or what action. What they are saying is that they have written to the Sudanese government. They want approval from the government before they can evacuate the students. But we all know the government is at war. When is the government going to give the approval? And as we speak, thank God we have some. We don't have casualties on our side as we speak, and we are praying and hoping that will not happen by the special grace of God. The issue is a very serious one. Everybody are concerned. Even some state government are concerned because some state government sponsored some students to Sudan to study. So it's everybody's issue. So we are hoping the ministry, as they have been saying, what they are saying is that they are waiting for approval from the Sudanese government before they can go in for the evacuation. So there is no definite timeline or time frame of when the evacuation is going to happen as we speak this morning. So if we get further information, we are also going to communicate to our students that do this officially, do this, and let's see what will happen.
Are you saying
that is it at this moment?
Are you saying that there is no hope of the movement? Given the difficulty that you described.
With what? Even the minister of Foreign Affairs was at Channel Television yesterday during the political, and he was also saying it that it is only when they get the approval from Sudanese government before they can make any evacuation. And with what you are saying, are we certain the approval will come? So I'm just appealing to them to also think out of box to see what we can do, how we can evacuate the students, because the situation in Sudan is getting worse by the day, and that is the reality. If you call the students, they speak in fear, they speak under tension, they can listen, you cannot hear what they are saying, they are scared. They are scared for their life, listening to the sound of bomb blasts every day, gunshots. So even alone, if we have students that are hypertensive, that is also dangerous for them. So that is the situation, sir.
Okay, so let me ask you, I am happy that you listened to the Minister of Foreign Affairs yesterday on our sister program, Politics Today, and he made it very clear that it was very dangerous to evacuate citizens by air. I think what they're thinking of is doing it by road. First and foremost, do you think that is an option that Nigerian students are happy to go with? And I'm wondering what else. Given the situation on the ground right now, how can the authorities help? Because you've talked about how, residents, citizens, especially students, are suffering. You've talked about the plight of female students, etc. But the primary question right now, how do you think that the authorities can alleviate the problems that the students are currently facing in Sudan?
the best, because if we are talking of evacuation, to be sincere, it's going to take a very lot of process, because evacuating through air is almost impossible. The airport has been grounded. There is no flight. There is no way flight can go in there to evacuate. So if they are going to even do any flight evacuation, it's going to be one of the countries closer to Sudan, either Egypt or Ethiopia. So, and if they are going to move students by road also, is also difficult as we speak due to the situation. So this can only happen if the troops who are fighting faction obey the call for ceasefire and give us the time frame. Okay, we are going to ceasefire for this so amount of time. Then we can use that period to evacuate our students. But as we speak, the authority can also help by getting relief materials across to our students from those campuses, which I know is not impossible. The NEMA, we've told them, we've also written to them that, please, if there is a way, the student does not have food, they have said it times without number. And I'm sure that they've communicated this also to the consulates there. As we speak, our diplomats have been evacuated from that country, yes. So if there is a way they can get relief materials, food, or daily provisions across to students there, at least it will also douse the tension on them about moving around or this, because it is lack of food and all these things that is even making some of them, as we speak, some of them are making their way to Ethiopia border. I've told you, for the past 3 days, they have been going to the Ethiopian border in Sudan, the Al-Fasi border like that, yes. And some of them are still there as we speak.
Okay,
I spoke with some of them yesterday.
So you agree with the authorities that it is dangerous indeed to, do an air evacuation, but you think that a road evacuation might be possible, and right now you're asking that they help get relief materials to the students on campuses. How do you think that would work? I mean, humanitarian workers allowed to, currently work within Sudan, within Khartoum?
Definitely, honestly, I don't know that also. And I think the embassy are the one that can, but we are only just appealing that they should find a way to get relief materials across to them. So definitely, if there's a way, they should try. They should look for those ways. If we cannot move 5,000 students out once, and we cannot also leave them there to because if it gets to a stage that they cannot stand the hunger again, what we are scared of will happen, because they will come outside and start finding their way to the border, or they want to go to the nearest state area apart from the state capital.
Clearly a very tricky situation there, and we'll definitely stay with this. I mean, we're here to help, so whatever information you have, perhaps want to pass it out there, let us know. But you're saying you can't confirm that letter that is flying around saying that they're meant to be evacuated on the 25th. Is that what you're saying? Okay, looks like we've lost connection. By the way, we're also meant to have the representative of the Nigerian students in Sudan, but we understand that there's been a network disruption, so we can't get him just yet. But as soon as the networks are restored, we'll definitely be getting our viewers update on that one. But I'd like to thank you so much, Akintaye Babatunde, who is a Vice President, External Affairs, NANS, joining us from Lagos virtually this morning. Oh, there you are. I just wanted to get a quick confirmation about that letter which is flying around. Have you seen it that says that evacuation would happen on the 25th?
No, I've not seen any letter about that. I've not seen such letter.
All right. Thank you very much. But get back to us when you have more, please.
Thank you very much.
All right. It's back to you guys in Abuja now. We continue that conversation, this time from NEMA's perspective.
Thank you so much. And had that conversation around the situation in Sudan. We're being joined by Dr. Onimode Bandele, Director, Special Duties, National Emergency Management Agency. He joins us virtually. Dr. Onimode Bandele, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning. Let's delve in real quick. You heard the representative of NANS, the Vice President Public Affairs, talking about the situation in Sudan. And it's worrying, particularly in the sense that Nigerian citizens and students especially are still stuck there, but those in the Foreign Office in the embassy have been evacuated. Can you confirm that? Have those in the embassy been evacuated?
Good morning once more, Nigerians. The truth is, nobody has been evacuated yet. I just spoke to the ambassador Olaniyan in Khartoum some few minutes ago. It is true that there are plans to get buses to start movement tomorrow morning. And as I speak to you, the Director General, National Emergency Management Agency, Mustafa Habib, is already in Cairo because that is the window that we are looking at. We have a town called Luxor and another one. So the movement is to be perfected between the embassy in Khartoum and the DG NEMA, who is already on ground in Cairo.
Okay. One would wonder, this situation escalated around April the 15th, but it's taken almost 2 weeks for anything to be done about Nigerian citizens and the evacuation. It's not a natural disaster. Can you tell us why it took so long for something to begin to happen from the Nigerian government side?
Well, from the conversation we had with the ambassador in Khartoum, when the situation started, it was not sensible for anybody to start any movement. And there was a total lockdown in that country. It's just a few days ago now that they got window. And this window they got, they still have to tread softly because we don't know what the situation might be. Let me quickly remind you that even countries like France and Qatar tried to do some movement on Saturday. Because of the security situation, they had to beat a retreat back to Khartoum. So as much as we feel the pain of our citizens, we feel we should do it right so that we don't have casualty on our side. So that is where we are as of today.
Now, you spoke about evacuating to Egypt. What's the distance between between the Egyptian border and to Sudan and the Ethiopian border? I do know that the distance to the Ethiopian border is about 400 kilometers or thereabout. Which one is closer? And just explain to us why the choice of Egypt instead of somewhere that's considered a little bit closer.
The distance I may not be able to say, but when you're doing consideration and evacuation, you have to do this evacuation considering security, and it has to be in a dignified manner. So the choice of Egypt should have come up because of the consideration of the people on ground here. So I will not be in Nigeria to tell you this is why Egypt is chosen as a preference.
We just got off the phone, or I don't know if you can hear me now. We just got off a Zoom conversation now with the Vice President, External Affairs at NANS, as a Student Association. And
That's correct.
Yes, I'm sure you must have been following the conversation, and he did confirm to us that they have concerns about students who have been able to make their way to the Ethiopian border, but have not been able to get past that border as a result of visa issues. I do not know if you were previously aware of that particular situation, and what you now plan to do now that you might now be aware of what is happening at the border.
Thank you very much. We are aware that some of our students self-evacuated to the border, about 10 of them, and the ambassador in Ethiopia has sent a note verbal to the government of Ethiopia to please allow these citizens to pass through their country. As of yesterday night, we spoke and effort is still ongoing. We are aware they are there. But what we are advising is, please, communication should be directed to the embassy in Khartoum because they are the sole representative of Nigerian government in that country.
So how will the students know when this note verbal has been received by officials at the border? If the conversation is going on between Khartoum and the officials in Ethiopia, how will they eventually know when the note verbal has now been processed and they're able to get through?
Working of government, where the embassy in Addis Ababa is not going to leave them to themselves. So they are going to follow up on that. Once that is gotten, I'm sure staff of the embassy will reach out to these students at the border town. But we'll keep talking to them to be sure that we get the right information at the right time.
So you're confirming to us that tomorrow it is guaranteed that movement by road is going to start. Is that what you're saying?
As confirmed by the Nigerian ambassador in Khartoum, yes.
How many people are we looking to evacuate? Because we understand that about 5,000 students have applied or are shown their interest to be moved out of Sudan.
Well, our projection was both students and others who want to evacuate about 5,000. But with my discussion with the ambassador this morning, the plan is for about 2,600, 2,800 to move immediately, including families of embassy staff.
How many? I didn't quite get that figure. Please, would you kindly say that again?
I say about 2,650 to 2,800 are expected to make the movement tomorrow. As these plans continue, we'll be able to update you the actual figure and exact time of departure from Khartoum to Cairo.
Okay, so let's talk about relief materials, because we understand that students, even the Minister for Foreign Affairs yesterday appealed to Nigerian students in Sudan to stay indoors. We understand that students are currently indoors. However, they're running out of food and other necessary materials to keep life going. Are you thinking of any way to provide some relief whilst you're also hoping, to make the arrangements for them to be able to leave?
Like I said earlier, what is paramount to us now is safe evacuation of this Nigerian citizen to Egypt. And in addition, I told you the Director General of NEMA is already on ground in Egypt. So those other parameters will be looked into and provision will be made to ensure that these people are evacuated safely and in dignified manner with the provision of all necessary assistance that is possible.
Okay, so evacuation is your focus right now, not the provision of relief materials.
They go hand in hand. As the movement is being supervised by the embassy in Khartoum, those on ground in Egypt too will be making provision for immediate relief once they arrive before they are transported to Nigeria.
Let me send this to my colleagues in Lagos.
Well, thank you, Markwe. I just want to know when last you were in touch with those students and others who are seeking to be evacuated, because we understand that there's been some sort of network disruption. So are you constantly in touch with them? Even if, we can get some relief materials to them now, at least maybe calls, messages to them would go a long way in showing them that we're with you and we're coming to get you. So in terms of that, how much work has been done, and when last were you in touch?
I must confess to you, I have not spoken to any student directly. And like I said, communication with our citizens in Sudan is the primary responsibility of the embassy, especially the ambassador. And from our discussion, he is in touch with them. And I'm sure that is why he's sure that when the evacuation kicks off tomorrow, he will have as many of the students as possible on board.
Clearly, NEMA will be playing a huge role, as we've seen NEMA play in the past for these evacuations. For the benefit of those maybe family members who might be watching and maybe want to pass the information, I don't know if there's some sort of information channel for those students as well. What time is that evacuation happening? What is the process? Are they going to stay indoors and wait for the buses to come to them, or they're meant to converge at a particular location for that evacuation to happen? Just in terms of those fine details, can you maybe give us an insight, timing?
Thank you very much. I'm in Nigeria. I'm handling the home leg here, but I can confirm to you that the embassy in Khartoum are doing everything possible to ensure that those who are to be evacuated will be evacuated in dignified manner. And the timing is a function of when these people are already in a particular place and movement can start. Mind you, to move 2,000 persons at a time poses a lot of security challenge, and I'm sure those nitty-gritty are being worked out by the ambassador in Sudan.
Just to be clear, I mean, you've confirmed that the evacuation is taking place or starting tomorrow. But what the minister told us, which you already confirmed also, is that we need some form of confirmation, official confirmation from the Sudanese authorities. Have we received, can you confirm if we have received that official communication from the government?
I'm sure the ambassador, His Excellency Olani, will not push out that information for students to prepare for evacuation if there is no guarantee from the home country. However, I cannot state clearly who they are discussing with, but what we are sure of, there is a process that has begun for us to bring back Nigerians from Sudan. Okay.
Well, just a quick one here. I mean, you said just now that you are handling the home leg of this evacuation. What's the plan when they arrive? What is the plan for the students? We understand that some of them are sponsored by their state governments and all. What's the plan when they arrive?
The process for home reception is, excuse me, get a dignified place to receive them, make provision for meal, and assist the students to get back to their home by provision of transport fare. That's our process.
This morning and your contribution. But just a quick one. You've said, you've used the word dignified manner a couple of times in the conversation so far. Can you please help us understand what you mean by they will leave in a dignified manner, especially since there's a crisis situation around?
If you are moving your citizen, you must give them the minimum comfort that is required for them to make that journey. Whatever will be a stress to them, you remove it and you work against any bottleneck in the course of evacuation. That's why we say dignified. You don't load a bus that's supposed to take 50 with 100 persons. That's not dignified. So that's what we are saying. A bus that's supposed to carry 50 will carry exactly 50. They can stretch their leg, they can move around, and they get to their destination safely.
So we're hoping that the desire to give them a dignified exit will not be a challenge in itself in the evacuation.
It shouldn't be, because the population is worked according to the number of buses. And the number of buses will determine how many can move at a particular time. But like I said, if you're evacuating in a situation of internal crisis like we have in Sudan, you have to be mindful of the number of buses in your convoy so that you can easily manage it security-wise.
All right, thank you very much. Dr. Onimode Bandele is a Director, Special Duties, Nigeria Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, speaking to us about the situation in Sudan. Thank you for coming on the show this morning.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment. Please don't go away.
Now, this building collapse conversation that we started with the welfare angle of that conversation earlier, but now let's look at the facility itself. I mean, it's been like 3 buildings in the past 48 hours or thereabouts. That's definitely something concerning. The Lagos State government also said that houses around the collapsed building in Banana Island should be pulled down. That and a number of other issues we want to look at this morning with Engineer Ajibola Tijani, who is a civil and structural engineer, member, Nigerian Institution of Civil Engineers. He is a member, Building Collapse Prevention Guild, member, Nigerian Society of Engineers, member, Concrete Society UK, a member of the Institute of Research Engineers and Doctors in the USA. He joins us virtually this morning. Thank you for joining us this morning, Engineer Tijani. Now, it would look like we seem to be papering the cracks as opposed to dealing with the issues. We've been talking about collapsed buildings almost on an unfortunately regular basis recently. Are there things that you think we're just toying around with, or where we don't have what they call the political will to deal with the issues as they ought to be dealt with?
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning, Nigerians. Firstly, I think what we are talking about is building that's still under construction, not building that are already in use. And that should make every one of us to be on our feet, because a building that is under its own weight is given weight for no reason. The political will has to be there from the government, and I think recently we've seen that effort after the collapse of the 21-story Ikoyi building. The principal actor, they are the developer, the engineers, and the people representing government, the building agency and the planning agency. The first thing is the developers. There are a lot of people now who are into that business. So it's not every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to go into real estate and make money at the expense of human lives. And if you recall, a year and a half ago when I came to speak about the collapse of the 21-story, I said something that patriotism has to be put forward. Yes, some people might say, does that bring food to my table? But that is the only way out. Because at the end of the day, when a system functions very well, we are going to be all right. When a system does not function properly, then what we are seeing is going to continue. So I will only urge the government to step up their game. I know within the system, government personnel might not be enough. For example, in Lagos, when you have about 35,000 live sites, so it's going to be difficult for the personnel of government to be at every site. So this is why I'm encouraging government to partner, to collaborate with the people in the private sector. We could have private inspectors that will take charge of some of these sites, and we can do a sort of prototype. Like, okay, let us have some of these sites, whether it's educational, whether it's residential or industrial, and let's see how it goes. We shouldn't be expecting this. And from the records I have with me, courtesy of the Building Collapse Prevention Guild, this should be the 555 building collapse since 1974. And Lagos started, I think, in 1982 and has the highest, which should be 327 by now.
Well, just to be clear, Engineer Tijani, you said just now that there are about 35,000 live sites. In other words, buildings that are undergoing construction now. Is this number for Lagos or for the entirety of Nigeria?
It's for Lagos.
Just Lagos alone is having 35,000 live sites for buildings, yes. Residential or commercial?
Both.
Now, and I'm happy that you mentioned that, because, I mean, it's a question anyone would want to ask. But what do you think the issues really are? We had a conversation, a similar conversation not too long ago, within the past 1 week or thereabout. And the understanding we have is that there cannot be any building collapse without the structures coming down. What is lost? What points are the crucial monitoring points that, if government pays attention to those, we might have a reduced rate of building collapses in the country?
The first thing, like, you have about 6 conditions that will happen to any building site. The first one, which usually might not be a serious issue, is the poor design from the structural engineers. I expect that any client that has taken up his job to any structural engineer consultant, they will expect that the proper thing will be done. Most time, the design might not be the problem. The real problem will come from the implementation of the design, where the developers want to make money by reducing the specification of the engineers. For example, if the engineers have specified the diameter of reinforcement that is meant to be used, the developer sometimes they want to use something less. The concrete specification for the strength of the building, the developer might want to change it, and they're not going to inform the engineer that this is what they are doing. So when you have a building that is meant to take, the foundation that is meant to take a certain load, and you've already tampered with it right even before the completion, of course, it's going to give way, because the foundation is like the human leg that carries the entire body. So if it is defective right from the onset, at a certain time, it's going to be distressed, and the effect is that you have a building coming down. So when you deal with the material, which many people now are using, which to me they are substandard, if we have quality material as specified by the engineers, if that is what we are using, of course, there won't be any issue with a building that is still under construction, which is just sustaining its own self-weight. The supervision aspect, that is the angle of underhand playing, that or the developer wants to get approval quickly, or they just want to find their own way around it so that they will not present the proper documentation. This is where some of the government representatives are guilty. Poverty doesn't mean one should be making money at the expense of other people's life. And I don't think that is poverty, that is just sheer greed. So when we put these things together, and again, the methodology of the construction, the engineer specifies what you want to do. You're going to use these piles. There's a way to drive in, or if you want to bore it. And if you decide to change these along the line without consulting the engineers, of course, we'll be having this kind of bad situation all the time.
I mean, looking at the figures, I mean, hearing you reel out updated figures from the building collapse scale just drives the point home. And I mean, 35,000 buildings under construction in Lagos just speaks to the fact that Lagos is one big construction site. And that is not an excuse to then say, oh, we have too much on our hands, so we don't have enough to monitor. These buildings, at least as far as I know, are approved by government in the first place. So if you've given the approval, some monies have been paid. Even beyond that, the responsibility of government is to ensure that things are done right. So I don't know if that is enough excuse, but we've had previous collapses to learn from. The infamous Ikoyi collapse 2021, which you talked about, is one. And I mean, many fatalities from that. But one thing that a lot of people have raised questions about is the outcome, because there was an investigation into that. There was a report submitted to government. There was even, I think, was it a coroner's inquest into that collapse? But the details of it, the outcome of it, are still not made known. So there's that sense of the collapse happens in the next 2 weeks. Nigerians will forget about it and move on. There will not be enough consequences. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that report. It's not publicly available as far as I know. But to that extent, what should we do then with these recent ones we've recorded? Not just in Lagos, by the way. There was another one in Abuja and the one in Ibadan.
Thank you very much. I'm an advocate that all these inquests, the report, the white papers, they should be in the public domain. And the essence is for academic purpose, so that the pupil engineers or those in the higher institution of learning, they can know what went wrong on a particular site, and that can guide them. The Ikoyi report, I think 26 out of 28 recommendations by the coroner was adopted by people that led the white paper. And I think that is something that we can applaud. But the implementation, based on what I read, a bit of it I read in the newspapers, I think government has started implementing them, though some of them might not be feasible to us, like the recommendation to discipline some of the agency staff of the state, and then the recommendation that some of the engineers, architects, and planners that were involved in shady deals be recommended for disciplinary action by their organization. So those might not be known to us, but in whole, the political will to make this thing public, especially when it involves human life, should be there. So I will encourage our leaders to ensure that these things are in the public domain, so at least we can learn. Because if we learn from one incident, that might help us to prevent others. The recent collapse at Banana Island is another issue, and I've seen the political will to do something on the part of the government. But beyond that, we need to make a statement that this will never repeat itself. About the number of construction sites, it is not all of them that are brought to the agencies of government. There are sites that probably the agency wouldn't even know, maybe in accessibility space, or the developer just felt, well, our site is in a place where they might not even know that something is going on. But it might be a collaborative effort with some of the personnel of state government as well. So it's something that is encompassing. All of us are involved. Those that are selling the building materials, the developers, the engineers, the supervisors, and the government agencies.
Well,
all of us come out from our hood and condemn what is happening and do what is right.
Well,
we can't continue this environment with building.
Absolutely, engineer. And it beats my mind that a developer will override a professional, an engineer, for example, someone who's studied buildings, how to ensure that buildings stand for centuries. Just beats my mind. But I want to speak for a lot of Nigerians who are not professionals now. They just want to rent a house, buy a building. They don't know the history. They don't know what went into it. I mean, these buildings are made, the finishing, they usually look very nice, painted well, lovely fittings, but you can't start breaking the walls to try to check the concrete or check, the iron fittings and all of that. So is there a way that those who want to rent buildings, because all of us, at least once a day, you have to step into a building to either work, sleep. So we can't do without buildings, at least for now. So is there a way to know that or ascertain that this building I want to rent, I want to buy, or whatever is, at least it met the requirements? Is there like a process to ensuring that, do they get certificates at the end of the day that at least you can show and say this building indeed passed all of the stages and the right forms of equipment and materials were used?
Yeah, the building control agency, they are statutory agency of government that gives certificate of occupancy to completed building. And for those who wants to rent an accommodation, I would recommend that they get a service of an engineer whenever they want to go and do the viewing, because in any environment, there will always be an existing building, especially the built-up area. So the engineer could look around and identify any issue with adjoining properties. And you might see some cracks on some. You might see that this area has water issue. You see the capillary coming from the ground, and he could, on his own, be able to assess that this building, from what I have seen, is most likely, because there are certain things that are feasible. If you've seen a house around where your client wanted to rent, and you could see that the house is already tilted, ideally, you expect every building to settle, but what we always try to avoid is differential settlement. So during the lifetime of a building, it has to settle, but once you notice differential settlement has happened, you see some noticeable cracks that are structural, not the cracks that maybe as a result of poor plastering or rendering, then that engineer should be able to advise the client. I have done that in some places for some people, and took the advice very serious. So we shouldn't just because we needed the place to put our head to take that that risk. Some risks are unreasonable. And I think the best thing is to consult an engineer to help you do the viewing to assess that area. So when you enter a building, you can feel whether the building is habitable or not. Some houses that you're going to enter without the AC, you could even feel like, oh, this place is cool. So that means around that area, there is probable water ingress coming from the foundation. So I'll suggest that people should get the service of a professional when they want to rent a place.
Engineer Tijani, where you are, there are like building codes and guidelines for practically everything. I mean, you plant a tree in front of your house and you want to cut it down, you have to inform the government that will send someone to come and either do the cutting themselves or monitor how you're even going to cut down that tree or uproot it. You mentioned about over 35,000 live sites in Lagos. And I can imagine how many live sites there are in Abuja, where there are all manner of estates popping up here and there, and most of them are empty. The question will be, how do you think the development control authorities in the country, in Nigeria, should go about ensuring that these buildings, old or new, the old ones are refurbished and the new ones are effectively constructed? How do you think they should go about this? Besides the fact that you mentioned there should be sort of like a private partnership with government to ensure that these checks are done effectively.
Like I said earlier, that collaboration is sacrosanct. It has to happen, even in the developed world. It has to happen. When you look at civil servants, they have the time they resume and the time they close. So after the closing hour, what happened? Like what happened in Apapa, the partial collapse, the site was actually sealed up after several warnings from the agency of government. But these people kept on working. They broke the seal. So if you have this collaboration with the private sector, they probably might work at the time, more than what the normal civil servant does work. And they could send out some of their staff to oversee what is going on that site. So I will encourage that the regulatory body, without wasting much of the time, get involved, the service of consultants, call in some of these people that are willing to partner with government, assess them, give them certification, and including some of the sites where they use the ready mix. My suggestion about that is government should have a kind of electronic system where you enforce that all the companies that are involved in the ready-mix concrete production, they are enrolled. And before they take this to any site, they have to seek approval from the building agency. For example, if a developer wants to cast maybe in 2 days' time, if you make the process seamless, the company that is engaged will get approval from the government agency. And this will show whether that concrete should go in there or not. For example, the Apapa place, if the concrete company knew that this place is under investigation or has been sealed up, they wouldn't dare to take any concrete to their site, or one that happened in Banana Island. If you know there's any infraction, then you wouldn't dare to. And if they do that, government should sanction that company. You can leave the developer. The developer cannot do anything without these people. So if a company that is producing concrete is dealt with, then they will sit tight and will be able to at least control some of these happenings.
All right, thank you so much. We've been speaking with Engineer Ajibola Tijani, a civil and structural engineer who joined us virtually from the US. Thank you this morning. Sunrise Daily will be back in a moment to look at something else. Do stay with us.
would seem like the conversations around zoning is going state level now, subnational, so to speak, with the IMO Charter of Equity, which, according to Chief Emmanuel Iwanyao, started as far back as 1990 and produced two governors in 1993, 1999, and on like that. But along the line, according to him, politicians destroyed it. Those were his words on Politics Today last week. But let's take this further now, see how far this is being taken by indigenes of Imo State with this conversation. Begin with Fidel Oyeneke, who is a special advisor, Imo Orientation Agency on the side of government, as well as Ihejirika Emeka, who is media director at an Achono campaign organization of the Labour Party. He is also a legal practitioner. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's begin with you, Mr. Oyeneke. Exactly how is government taking it? On the one hand, the Elders Council have adopted a second term for the governor. On the other hand, there are people, several people opposing that opposition, including Chief Emmanuel Iwanyao, who is saying it's the turn of the Owerri zone. Exactly how is government receiving this? Mr. Oyeneke, that is for you.
Yeah,
we can hear you. Please go ahead.
He said that it's a pleasure being here today. People of Imo State and the entire Southeast. It's this Charter of Equity as expounded and they recently approved by very highly regarded citizens of integrity. I'm talking of the Imo Elders Council. And this charter has gone a long way in ensuring that the agitation.
Well, while
the expectation of people are this.
Well, Mr. Oyeneke, we are having a difficulty getting a sustainable conversation from you because it seems to be going on and off. But let's see if we have Mr. Ihejirika Emeka with us here. Well, what's the position of you, your group, and your party on this Imo Charter of Equity?
Thank you to be here. First of all, the Imo Charter of Equity evolved properly in the so-called Imo Charter of Equity because in 1999, a group of PDP elders, in 1999 to be precise, a group of PDP elders came together and said that there are three zones. The zones are Imo North or Kigwe Zone, Imo West or Olu Zone, and Imo East or Owerri Zone. So Imo North or Kigwe Zone has the smallest local government. That's smallest number of local government. That's 6 local government. Imo West or Olu Zone, where the present governor comes from, have 12 local government. And the Imo East, that's Owerri Zone, has 9 local government, and the capital is situated there. So they came together. They said that's a PDP arrangement because PDP was the dominant party in Imo State then. They were the ones about to get into power because everybody who was anybody in 1999 was in PDP. So they said, let's start with Olu Zone, which has a local government. That was why the man who was poised to be the PDP candidate, who is from Imo East, that is Owerri Zone, considered that ticket to former Governor Achiku Demwa, who is from Imo West. Now, Achiku Demwa now picked his running mate from Imo North, which is Okigwe Zone. Now, it worked for PDP until 2011, when, due to their internal crisis, they didn't have a candidate, and somebody from Okigwe Zone is Imo North, now picked the ticket from another party, that's the PPA, that is former Governor Ikedi Hakim. Now, when he picked the ticket, he did 4 years, until 2011, when he was about to complete the second term, he later joined PDP. I think about a year after winning under PPA, he defected to PDP. But after doing 4 years, the Olu zone, with Rocha Sokorocha as their candidate in Abgaden, collected it with the active connivance of Owerri zone. How? In that election in 2011, the 9 local governments in Owerri zone voted for somebody from Olu zone. So that truncated that charter of equity. He who must come to equity must come with clean hands. What the PDP elders decided was that if a zone has to do their turn, they will do 8 years. Olu did, under Governor Udemwa, they did 8 years. Okigwe zone, when it comes, because they have the smallest number of local governments, 6 local governments, they only did 4 years until Owerri zone connived with Olu to take it back and give it to Rochas. Because Rochas won in the 9 local governments in Owerri zone. So what we are saying is, in as much as it's desirable to give every component zone in the state a chance to put forward their best, there is still competence, capacity, and the ability to deliver the goods as factors to be considered in choosing people. Why this zoning issue is coming up is because of the incompetence of the present government, especially in terms of service delivery, security, and economic development. They've failed totally, and that is why the clamor now. So, no right-thinking person will tell Olu zone or Imo West to go for another 4 years, making it 24 years, while Okigwe zone, whose turn was truncated after only 4 years, has not even done any. They've only done 4 years. So that is my take on the agitation. But there are other aspects that are supposed to be considered.
Before we go to those other considerations, Mr. Hejirika, I mean, it seems that, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that you have contradicted yourself in the last few statements that you made. On the one hand, you're saying that competence should play a major role. But on the other hand, you're saying that anyone from Olu shouldn't be considered for the next 4 years by any right-thinking person. Exactly what are you saying?
Exactly what I'm saying is that competence, capacity, and the ability to deliver the dividends of democracy to the people of Imo State are factors to be considered. But that does not mean...
What if that consideration, those factors that you talked about, competence and all of it, what if it can only be seen by the people of Imo State from any candidate from Olu zone alone?
Yes. You see, competence, all the factors I mentioned now, resides in people in all these zones I've mentioned, all the 3 component zones. You have extremely capable people in all the zones. For example, today in Okigwe zone, which has 6 local governments, you have extremely competent people, including Senator Atana Chono, the Labour Party candidate. Now, there are 3 major political parties in Imo State today. The APC are fielding the incumbent governor who is from Olu zone. They've done 20 years already. 20. Senator Sam Anyango is holding the PDP flag. They've done, I think, 2.5 years already, because we are still counting the Enwerem and the Hedioha combined. And in that zone, is Owerri zone, is the most urbanized zone. Every major infrastructure, every seat of higher learning is situated in that zone.
Just a quick one,
And
Mr.
then you have
Hejurika. Just a second. Do you see any value, political or otherwise, for equity, fairness, whatever considerations? Do you see any value in the conversations around the IMO Charter of Equity?
Yeah, there are. I don't know what you mean by value, but if it is for the sake of political stability, for the sake of economic development, then there might be some value. There are always value in such conversations. There are always value. But what we are trying to say is that it should be to address the injustice of the past. For example,
Oh, sir, the conversation has suddenly gone stuck. But let's see if Mr. Onyeneke is with us. Mr. Onyeneke, are you with us now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm totally with you.
All right, please go ahead. I mean, you wanted to respond to a question earlier as to this, in spite of with all of this opposition coming, at the heel of the sanctioning or approval for a second time by the Imo Elders Council, how is the government taking the opposition coming from left, right, and center? Go ahead, please.
Now, first of all, before I come to the first time in the history of Imo that we are coming out, that our elders and everybody come out with a decision that is being applauded by everybody, which we call the Imo Charter of Equity. Prior to this,
Well, we're most certainly having some
people have
difficulty
been
with
lost
that
in
one.
especially as it pertains to gubernatorial elections.
Go ahead, Mr. Yeneke. All right. Is Mr. Hejurika back with us now? Okay. Well, this conversation will seem like it's not just going to go away, but the fact that we are unable to get a consensus, even from the people within one state or 5 in the southeast region of the country, is a little bit of a concern.
Well, it's politics. You rarely find people agreeing, especially when you have 18 political parties. It's literally 18 different opinions. But it's interesting when you do like a backtrack to how this whole thing started. And I'm glad that, he gave an insight as to how Imo North, which is Okigwe, has 6 local government areas. Imo West, which is Olu, 12 local government areas. And Imo East, which is called Owerison, has 9 local government areas. And, from the figures, if you were to go by the zoning, the Imo West has done 20 years in all, according to him. Imo North, 4 years, and I think Imo East, 2.5 years, and the truncations that happen. So it's interesting when these conversations come into play, and then you have to put in the question of competence as well. And I'm glad you pressed home that point, what weights these issues have. But let's go back to Mr. Fidel Onyeneke and hope that the internet would cooperate this time around.
The internet will not zone him out.
Exactly. Mr. Onyeneke, can you hear us? It doesn't look like he can. And okay, if you can you respond, please? Okay, not to worry. We'll work on that.
There's a lot to be done. This is the Charter of Equity, and
So we lost the most part of what you said, and it's a bit tricky for people to at least get your response. We only get them in bits and pieces, so it's hard to piece together. So maybe we'll try to work on that so we can get proper value from this conversation.
Let me say this. It's important to stress that what informed even the decision of the Elders Council to come out with this Charter of Equity is just to ensure that there is peace, unity, and progress in Imo State. And I thank God that it's coming at a time when we have an incumbent governor who has really succeeded in making sure that Imo has moved fast forward. Apart from the infrastructural development and other activities other projects embarked upon by the governor of Imo State, His Excellency, Distinguished Senator Hope Uzodinma. He has succeeded in also ensuring that there is this, running this all-inclusive government, where everybody, irrespective of where you come from and so on, is carried along. Apparently, an indication that the governor is determined, more than every other person, of course, past administrations, to ensure that all sections of this country.
Now that we have you clearly, Mr. Onyeneke, at least we can use the audio. I'd like you to speak to the figures that Mr. Ejirika put out, that Olu has done 20 years, Okigwe 4 years, and I think Owerri 2.5 years. In terms of equity, fairness and justice, would you say it is fair to have Olu continue, do an extra 4 years and have 24 compared to what others have, which is 4 years and 2.5 years? Does that align with equity, fairness, and justice for you?
Let me tell you why there shouldn't be anything wrong with that. I am saying this because in the past, like I explained, we never had any clear-cut decision that there must be a document called Charter of Equity. People have been speculating, trying to find a way of ensuring that different parts of the state, power rotates from one place to the other. But now that the elders of the state have come out with this particular decision, it is only fair and that we are lucky, even as senior citizens, to have an incumbent who is working very hard, who is performing, who has already laid foundation for the development of this state through his projects, apart from.
There goes the connection yet again. Mr. Onyeneke, if you can hear me. Okay, we're having difficulty getting across to you. Looks like this is one of those mornings. But if you can hear me, just respond to this one. So at the national level...
And so on, like Rose has been back upon. He is running an all-inclusive. That is why I said he is there. And he is now the elders say that the thing that has, anything that has must make 8 years.
Okay. Oh dear. I mean, we just have to find a way around this. Mr. Onyeneke, we're not getting full value for what you're saying. We're losing you here and there, and it's very tricky. But the question I would like to... Please hold on for a moment, Mr. Onyeneke, if we can just get him to log out of the connection and come back in. Maybe we'll have, some sort of fidelity with that connection so we can get a good conversation. But it's quite interesting because what we saw play out in the build-up to the presidential election was a call for equity, fairness, and justice, particularly for the southeast region of the country, and the clamor was quite loud. And you would understand, perhaps that was part of the reason we saw the southeast vote the way it voted, literally of 90%. For the candidate of the Labour Party across the states. But when it trickles down now to state politics, it's quite interesting then the conversation that plays out. And it just shows how politics can be very dynamic. But the good thing is that the people have the decision to make at the end of the day. Come November, it's the people of Imo that will take a look at all of these factors from the zoning, competence, and all of that, the pedigree of the candidate, and then make a decision about that. But we have Mr. Ejirika Emeka back with us. And, I'm interested in hearing your thoughts about the Owerri zone because I know your candidate naturally is from Okigwe, so you'd speak for him. Okigwe has done 4 years. But you said earlier on that the Owerri zone has done even less than 4 years. Am I correct? So why not speak for that zone, if I got you correctly?
No. He who must come to equity must come with clean hands. Look at what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the Charter of Equity, which is an unwritten gentleman agreement.
Okay.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go on.
The Charter of Equity, which is an unwritten gentleman agreement between those three zones, infers that any zone that has to do their turn must do 8 years. 8 years, not 4 years. Now, Olu zone did theirs from 1999 to 2007. Okigwe zone continued because it was their turn. Now they did 4 years. After 4 years, Rocha Sokorocha from Olu zone now collected it back with the active support of Owerri zone. Collected it back with the active support of Owerri zone. And since then, it has never left Olu zone, except the brief 7 months period by Emeki Hedioha. Now, if we want to kickstart, yes, we want to kickstart that charter of equity, that unwritten gentleman agreement, we are okay with it. But it must start from Okigwe zone, 4 years. It must start from Okigwe zone, 4 years. It must not start from Olu zone that has taken 20 years. It must start from Okigwe zone where it stopped last. So that is the argument.
Right. Let me just follow up with this one. If you can hear me,
kickstarting it.
Mr.
It addresses some.
Right. If you can hear me, let me just ask you then that. I mean, looking at this, the way things are being zoned, I wonder then why you are big on a gentleman agreement, which you said was agreed within the PDP. Why is it something then, because you're for the Labour Party, we saw how the Southeast voted during the presidential elections, for example, overwhelmingly for the Labour Party, and it was like, okay, out with the old, in with the new. So why still try to build something on a gentleman's agreement, which was at least agreed upon within the PDP? Isn't that contradictory to what the Labour Party stands for?
No. I didn't get your question on the Labour Party angle.
Okay. You said that this agreement was done within the PDP, and you said that, everyone, the who is who at that time was in the PDP, so there was that agreement within the PDP. But you are now in the Labour Party. You have a candidate in the Labour Party, and what the Labour Party stands for essentially is sort of a change, a breath of fresh air, out with the old, in with the new. So why still rely on an agreement which was forged in the PDP era?
That's what I'm saying now. You see, they are the people who are bringing up this charter of equity. Labour Party is totally for competence, but there are still, Labour Party is still for justice and equity. Labour Party still recognizes that competence resides in everywhere in this world. There are very competent people. But then the Labour Party still recognizes that certain things will have to be addressed. You know, people think that we voted for Labour Party in the Southeast because P2B is an Igbo man. No, that's not true. If you bring somebody who is not competent, I'll tell you, the person will even start failing from the Southeast. That's how we do. We go for competent people. We see far politically. We know somebody who will serve the people. Now, this Imo Charter of Equity we are talking of now, we are not the people bringing it up. It is primarily the PDP, same PDP people who are bringing it up. But it's an idea they are bringing it up, idea from the past. If there are certain aspects from an idea from the past that is good, then we concur with it. We will not throw away the baby with the bathwater. No. That is why we are saying that if that Charter of Equity has to be respected, then we have to start from where it stopped. And where it stopped is from Okigwe zone. That was why, that was when Hakim, who would have done his other 4 years at the stretch, and we know that Okigwe is done with, was truncated. And the Owerri zone handed it over to Olo, and it has never left that place except for 8 months that Emeki Hedioha from Owerri zone stayed. So there's no contradiction here. And it's not, these questions you're asking are not a yes or no question. Because there are aspects of this and there are aspects of that here. If you watch the Labour Party's primary, you will see that there were about 14 or 15 candidates. Out of these 15 candidates, 2 were from Okigwe zone, 2. 1 from Olu zone, and the rest were from Owerri zone. And when the results came out, Senator Atan Achono defeated everybody by 13 votes. So Labour Party, being a party of fairness and justice, threw it open to everybody. Because they know that the final decision does not rest with the party.
If you can hear me, the question will be, which of the primaries are you talking about? Because as far as we know, the Labour Party had more than one primaries that produced different candidates. But let's go over to Abuja. My colleagues have questions for you as well. It's over to you guys now.
Well, we're waiting to see which one of the primaries, as you pointed out, will eventually be recognized at the end of the day. But clearly, Mr. Ihejirika is representing the Atan Achono campaign organization. And certainly, it does appear that you have some issues with this Imo Charter of Equity. You're saying that it can work pari passu, but it appears that you want it to, be held in abeyance for now, pending when, all of the other zones are able to complete, or at least the other two zones are yet to do 8 years each, do theirs. Is that what you're suggesting?
You see, don't put certain words into my mouth, which I might not have meant. But look at what I'm saying. The Charter of Equity is a blast from the past. It was not conceived in the present. It was conceived in 1999. Now, that Charter of Equity was truncated in 2011 when Owerri Zone, who are supposed to support Okigwe Zone to complete their zone, handed it over to Olu Zone. It has never left Olu Zone until 8 months that Emeki Ihedioha from Owerri Zone did before the Supreme Court now gave it back to Olu Zone. Now, what we are saying is that if this Charter of Equity, we are not the one that resurrected it. It's the PDP people that resurrected it. They are the ones who formulated it in 1999. They are the ones who are resurrecting it now. If this Charter of Equity has to be kick-started, it must start from where it stopped. It must be kick-started from where it stopped. That is 2011. When Ihedioha Hakim, who is from Okigwe Zone, the smallest zone with 6 local governments, this other one has 9, this other one has 12. So you don't take away a child's toy because that child is small. No, you must give everybody that fairness. That is what we've been complaining in the country. And then it should not happen here. And then, where that's equity and fairness, as the PDP elders, rightly or wrongly, foresaw and then implemented until it was truncated in 2011. We are not, like I said, we are not the ones who are bringing it up. The PDP people are bringing it up. And if every other person would agree to it, if every other person would agree to it, then it has to start where it stopped. It should not be rejigged to suit a particular zone. I mean, the least developed zone in this state is Okigwe Zone. Okigwe Zone is the least. It doesn't even have one single higher institution. So what are we talking of? So you see, all these things has to be taken holistically.
I take it that your candidate, the candidate whom you're supporting, is from Okigwe. Is that correct?
Yes, he is. Okay. Yes, he is.
So everybody will try and work out this particular program or this particular charter to suit their own purpose. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we are not. If you watch Labour Party is a fair-minded organization, political party. We are not saying this thing. You see, if you've been following the trend of what I've been trying to explain, you will see that there are points, that there are merits, total merit in what I've just said. We are not the ones resurrecting the Charter of Equity. We are not the ones.
Indeed, but you said that the Charter of Equity, was in existence in 1999, and that's when almost everybody was in the same political party at that particular time. Isn't that correct?
No, I said the who is who in Imo politics. The giants were in PDP.
And now it's the PDP that's trying to bring this back. But let's see if we can bring in your colleague, Mr. Oyeneke. Mr. Oyeneke, you've heard that I'm sure you've been following the conversation so far, and Emeka has said that it is the PDP that's trying to resurrect this charter. You are of the APC, if I'm correct. Is that okay with you, working by the charter, or would you rather stick to the issues of competence?
In the first place, we've never had anything like emotional equity in the past. People were not saying it. Some people had in mind that praying for such a charter, but it was never formalized. This is the first time in the history of Imo State that elders have come together and brought out this document, which I believe will solve the problems of power sharing in this state called Imo. And above all, why everybody must commend this present charter of equity, this one as funded by the Elders Council, is the fact that it will now give an opportunity for easy sharing of power to different places. Let me tell you, if you don't use this charter of equity and you allow people to be struggling for position, there will still be victory. Remember that politics is a game of number. I am happy my colleague mentioned that Onu has 12 local government areas, over 9 or 6. It simply means that if you don't use this charter of equity, Onu will continue to dominate. So if you want good things for Imo people, if you want fairness, if you want equity, this is the time to do it. So that immediately the incumbent governor, who has already done for years, complete 8 years, definitely power will move to away. And that's how we represent the next 8 years. If you go to Okizo, but if you allow somebody to be struggling and struggling, there will be threat to peace.
Mr. Eneke, if I may come in here, Mr. Eneke, what he says specifically is that if this charter must be used again, then it should go back to where it started from, where it was stopped before, and that is the Okigwe zone. You don't think that's the most equitable thing to do?
No. Since we never had any formal charter of equity, we are now commencing it. It is starting with this charter of equity that has been formalized now by the Imo Elders Council. And the common sense and, of course, simple logic, and, of course, whatever you view from every angle, it requires the incumbent governor who is already in office and, of course, doing well in satisfying the yearnings and aspirations of Imo people. After completing his 4 years, to complete the next 4 years, so that the equity has already started. If this charter had come earlier before now, that would have been a difference. So the point I'm making is that you cannot see somebody who is already performing, who has done well, and who is being endorsed by different people. I'm talking of distinguished Senator Hope Uzodinma, and you now want to tell him to step out because of to satisfy a particular group.
All right, thank you, Mr. Eneke.
And let me stress here, because they have been...
All right, Mr. Eneke, thank you. I'll just hand you back to my colleagues in Lagos, Ayo, and go ahead, Ayo.
Well, thank you. But quick question from Kyle before we sign off.
Yes, I was just going to quickly reference, the point which was made by Chief Nwanyawu during that interview regarding the charter. And for Mr. Ihejirika, you said that this was resurrected by the PDP, but Chief Nwanyawu speaks to that effect that, in fact, nominating someone from Olu is against that equity, that it should be someone from Owerri.
I was about coming to that. Now, I wanted to make reference to that before he stopped me. I want to say that Chief Emmanuel Nwanyawu, we highly respected Nigerian African, a man of integrity, couldn't have been following his post and so on. He made it very clear that this is the thought of Oluzo. The incumbent governor should complete his 8 years before the governorship.
Well, this question is for Mr. Ihejirika, Mr. Onyeneke. It's not fair to actually jump in like that, if you can hear me. It's actually for Mr. Ihejirika. I understand that you have a response to that, but let's hear Mr. Ihejirika out first, quickly, as we wind down.
Okay, let me say something. My brother there, my elder brother there, Chief Onyeneke, has been in politics here for a very long time. He has held several offices. He knows perfectly well what I'm talking about. That there was an agreement, a gentleman agreement between the PDP and now he's talking of the elder. Who are the elders? These are APC elders that endorse the governor. No. Wait, let me finish, sir. Let me finish, sir. Then later you go on, please. You're eating into my time, sir. Please. Sir, please now. Please, I didn't interrupt you. Why don't you allow me to finish?
Mr. Ihejirika land, so we can get value in this conversation. Mr. Onyeneke, just a moment. Mr. Ihejirika, go on. We're winding down in about a minute now.
This is APC elders that endorse the governor. And Chief Nwanyawu will never Chief Iwanya will never say the governor should start. And meanwhile, he said the governor performed. This is the era where there is most insecurity in Imo State. And you see, that insecurity is even building a house and residing in the very zone that the governor comes from, even in his local government. So when he's saying the governor has performed, they have endorsed.
Well, you didn't quite answer my question, Mr. Ejirika. I'm saying that I was Chief Nwanyao that spoke about it on Politics Today just recently as well. But let's allow Mr. Onyeneke have the last word on this as we wind down in 20 seconds.
My last word is that the words of elders are words of wisdom. And Chief Nwanyao has even issued a statement clarifying his stand on this, that now that we have an incumbent governor who is doing well in the person of the single senator of Uzodimma, he should complete 8 years, after which power can now move to another zone in Imo State.
He actually described those who have endorsed an Olu person for a second time as ignorant of the principles of that Imo Charter of Equity. Those were his words on the program.
There is no way you can decide the membership of Imo Elders Council cuts across different political parties, different groups.
Well, even at that, it's clear now, Mr. Onyeneke, my sincere apologies, we really have to go now. It's clear, obviously, that even the political class in Imo are very, very divided about this. And I'm wondering how the Imo Charter of Equity will have any life if the political class does not agree. But we have to end this conversation at this point. Fidel Onyeneke, Special Advisor, Imo Orientation Agency, as well as Ejirika Emeka, who is Media Director at the National Campaign Organization of the Labour Party. Both men joined us virtually from Owerri in Imo State. Very quick one, conversations from you to this program. Temitope Olodo Esquire says, with the frequency of global conflicts, Nigerian government needs to revisit their evacuation policy, and I believe NANS should explore the idea of creating NANS emergency funds to help in situations like this.
Well, Amos, with this one, the lessons from Ukraine and Sudan on the plight of Nigerian students highlight the urgent need to have a genuine conversation on fixing education in Nigeria. Of course, nothing will be said after this. Well, that wouldn't happen, hopefully.
Festus Akimbewa says the raging war in Sudan between the supporters of the president and supporters of the vice president is a tragedy. Although evacuating as many as 5,500 Nigerians from the country will not be easy, Nigerians trapped in the war-ravaged country must be evacuated as a form of priority before it gets worse. Henceforth, Nigeria's embassies and High Commission abroad must plan for things like this.
And HGK says we'll keep experiencing building collapse because we pay lip service to quality. Developers cut corners at any given opportunity to the detriment of lives. They should know that you cannot cheat the system. Poor quality adds up. Kobo-wise, Naira foolish. Well, that's where we have to leave it for your meals and the program this beautiful Monday morning. Thank you so much for being a part of, well, letting us be a part of your day. Thank you for watching. I'm Mao Pelgwin Yusuf.
And I'm Neo Taigbe.
I'm Kayode Okikele.
Work resumes tomorrow. I'm not a spoiler. Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful day.